today.
Lockport Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, March 8th, 2016. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call for quorum, please.
Mr. Bellotta is not here. Mr. Likens?
Here.
Mr. Portfolio?
Here.
Mr. Maloney?
Here.
Mrs. Wold?
Here.
Mr. Oxley?
Here.
And Mr. Teese is absent.
Okay, we do have a quorum, thank you. This time I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the February 9th meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Mr. Oxley, second from Mr. Portfolio. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The purpose of this board is to review all zoning and development plan requests for compliance with the city's comprehensive plan, the city's zoning ordinance, and certain components of the city's development code. This board also reviews and makes final determination of variance requests from the city's zoning ordinance. Staff first case is Lockport Township.
Ron Alberico is here tonight on behalf of Lockport Township government. The township has submitted petitions to annex property located at 1463 South Farrell Road into the city of Lockport. This is the location of the former Parkview Christian Church. The following requests are before Plan Commission tonight for review. The first is rezoning of this property to R1, single-family residential, and the second request is for a special use permit for a government office. There is an aerial on the screen to give you a general idea of the property and location. It's located on the west side of Farrell Road, about 500 feet south of Division Street. The parcel is about 7 acres, and it's currently zoned R3, single-family residential in Will County. The surrounding land uses to the north are residential. Those are unincorporated under the jurisdiction of Will County. Property to the south is also under the jurisdiction of Will County with rural residential zoning. To the west is senior housing called Gale Gardens. That's under the jurisdiction of the city of Lockport. And then on the east side of Farrell Road, it's city of Lockport. It's William J. Butler Elementary School. So some background on this case. The township purchased this property with the intention of moving their government offices from the Central Square building to this location, and they hope to open in the fall. The property was developed under the jurisdiction of Will County. There's an building about 25,000 square feet, associated parking, and then there's a metal garage on the northeast corner of the site. When the township takes this property over, they'll be doing interior remodeling to the building. Exterior site improvements are going to be minimal. They're going to be installing a dumpster enclosure, repaving and restriping the parking lot, and then they're going to be installing a taller overhead door on the garage so that they can fit senior buses into it. The property is currently on well and septic and will continue to be on that when they annex into the city. There are utilities, there's water and sewer available along Farrell Road, so when those are no longer functioning, they will be required to tap onto the city services. The public hearing tonight is on the zoning of the property and the special use permit. I should note that the township could move into this property without annexing into the city of Lockport, and they would be considered a permitted use under the current zoning in Will County. But at the request of the city of Lockport, the township has submitted petitions to annex into the city. Based on the surrounding zoning being residential, it's staff's recommendation that the property also be zoned R1 single family when it's annexed. Government offices require a special use permit in that zoning district, which is why it's required. We feel the special use permit is appropriate in this location. The use is consistent with our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan recommends civic building and land use in this location. And then additionally, they're not expanding use on the property. They're going to be located within the existing building and the existing parking areas. So to summarize, the two actions before you tonight is zoning of the property to R1 single family and the special use permit for a government office. Staff is recommending approval of both items.
Thank you. This case requires a public hearing. Have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion from Moxley, second from Portfolio. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Alberico, did you care to make any comments at this time?
No, I am here to answer any questions. I did bring all the responses from the letters we sent, certified letters.
Okay. At this time, we'll open the floor from anyone in the public that wishes to speak on the matter of this particular case for the annexation of the township property. Seeing and hearing none, did you want to make some comments regarding what you have there?
Basically,
Step up to the microphone.
Basically, I'm Ron Alberico, Lockport Township Supervisor. We're looking to move into that property. We want to create a community center so we can do a lot of senior and all residential programming. We are limited here to do programming with our space needs here. Our offices are running out of space for our records. Our assessor's office is getting small, so this opportunity to buy this building came along. It's a wonderful opportunity for the township. We would like to become part of the city since we've always worked well with the city, and the city would like to see us annex in. So we're looking forward to working with the city and continuing our good relationship.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Oxley, any questions or concerns?
None.
Thank you. Mrs. Wold?
I have no questions.
Mr. Portfolio?
One question. Are there any city regulations that apply to the building in terms of the facade and other things like that? Are they grandfathered in since the building was put up so long ago?
Right, the building is coming in as it exists today. They're not making any exterior improvements to it. All of the improvements they're planning on doing are exterior.
Are there any required to switch to? No?
No.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Likens?
I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. I agree with staff's recommendations on this. I think it is appropriate to approve this. At this time, we'll have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion from Moxley, second from Portfolio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve based on staff's recommendations.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Motion from Mr. Oxley, second from Mr. Portfolio. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Mr. Portillo?
Yes.
Mr. Maloney?
Yes,
Mrs. Wold?
Yes.
And Mr. Oxley.
Yes.
motion carries. This will go before the committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday, April 6th. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right here in this room?
All right,
thank
thank you
you,
very
Ron.
much. Thank you very much.
Next item is Lockport Township Fire Prevention District. This also calls for a public hearing. Have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Oxley, second from Portfolio. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Public hearing is now open.
Chairman, the fire chief is here this evening. I'm going to let him go through his presentation before the staff report, if that's okay.
Yeah, Chief, just come on, step right up.
Thank you. My name is Dave Scory, currently the Fire Chief of Lockport Township Fire Protection District, and I would like to introduce, I do have some other people in the room with me, Deputy Chief Paul Hertzman, Deputy Chief Frank Blasky. The gentleman to your left is Jason Estes, who is our architect for the project. Then I also have two of our elected officials in the room, Henry and Dave Paley are two of our 5 trustees. So I thought probably the best way to handle this would be to kind of share with you the process that we went through to get to where we are today. Even though our name is the Lockport Township Fire Protection District, we're much more than that. And, you know, we share, government services for serving the community, but our footprint's a little bit bigger. And you can see before you right here, where everything that's color-coded, that is the district that we protect. So to give you an idea what that is if you look in the lower right-hand corner where that red line, double red line, that's I-355. And right below there is where Silver Cross Hospital is. And then if you go kitty corner to the far end, there's Weber Road and I-55, and Weber Road and 126. So it's geographically, it covers 42 square miles, or covers parts of 7 different townships, 3 different cities. So even though we're the Lockport Township Fire Protection District, we cover, Lockport, Crest Hill, Romeo, kind of a large area. These are pictures of the 6 stations that we provide that coverage out of. We have 2 in Lockport, 2 in Crest Hill, and 2 in Romeoville. Top left is Station 1 on 9th Street, which is the one we're going to be talking about tonight. Top right is Station 2 in Crest Hill, built in 1966. Middle left is Station 3, which is 135th and Weber Road, Romeoville, built in 1998. Station number 4, middle right, is the building that was built on Bruce Road, just off of Berg Street, built in 2006. Station 5, lower left, O'Hare Drive, which is right behind the Target on Weber Road, built in 2007. And then lower right is our headquarters building, which was built in 2009. Here again, just to give some, and pardon the history of the department, but I think it helps you understand the decision-making process that our board and staff went through. Upper right-hand corner, picture of the downtown fire department. The fire department has always been associated with downtown Lockport. Lower right is Patty O'Brien with his 1901 hose cart. That was the first fire apparatus that the fire department had. Lower left was the Station 1, which sits right now on 10th Street. There's a 3-story apartment building there. That's where Station 1 used to be. And then if you look at the upper left, that's when the old City Hall, which I believe the building department sits in now. So the idea of the station moving around is long been part of our history. This building shows the Station 1 when it was built back in 1959. So we're talking a building that was built 65 years ago. And what's unique about this picture, and if you can look into the bays that are open, the center one is a 1963 fire truck. The one to the right is a 1965 fire truck, and that one to the left is a 1936. So the reason why I point this out is those are the types of vehicles that we were dealing with when this building was built in 1959. This is another close-up of that 1936 truck. It was an old military truck, and that's what the fire department got in the old days. This is another picture of Station 1, and this is kind of a progression of how the fire vehicles grew. So this is really good because if you look to the right, you can see that ambulance. That's a 1960s vintage. That second fire truck, or the first one from the right, that's that 1955 one that I showed you. And if you look at the over, that's the vehicles that were bought in the 60s. So you can see how the vehicles grew from the 50s to the 60s. This is just a real quick diagram that was part of our archives. I thought it helped to express what we were dealing with. The vehicles that were bought in the 60s, they were 22 feet long. This is the same diagram of the vehicles that we just took delivery of this year, 32 feet long. The lower pictures here, the top ones we'll just ignore for now, but the bottom ones, that shows that 1960s vintage, and the lower right shows what the fire trucks that we just took delivery of this year. And by the way, the one on the right that's got number 1 on it, that is the one that's located in the station up here on 9th Street. This shows the difference, how the ambulances grew. Top left, 60s, top right, what we're buying now. Lower left, the ladder truck back in 1968. Lower right is the ladder truck that we have today. That ladder truck today is 12'6" tall. It does not fit in Station 1. So the project history that the district has dealt with started back in 2009, and this originally started out as a remodel job. We realized that we had to remodel the building, and we hired an architect, and it was the same architect the district's had a relationship with since 1998. And as we went through the project, it just kept growing, and I'll go over that in a second, but the consultant, our architect, he's the one that pointed out, he says, hey, once you get to like 75% of what a new building costs, he goes, you really have to think about what you're doing. Because whenever you start a project, and anybody who owns a home knows this, you start out, it's gonna cost $100, and by the time you're done, it costs $150. That's just part of remodeling. So he said, when you start talking about that remodeling, he goes, when you get to that 75%, you really need to start thinking. So over the last 5 years, we've been bringing this back to the board. The board kept telling us, review it, and talk it. And between our senior staff and the elected officials, 5 years, we looked at call volume, we looked at the cost of remodeling, the cost of rebuilding, the cost of remodeling, the cost of rebuilding. Finally, in 2015, we said, you know what? It now costs $400,000 more than if we would have did it back in 2010, so we're going to do it. So they made the decision. So here's some of the reasons some of the issues that we had to address. Sewer line. The sewer line in that building runs completely across it. So it comes in on the west side by the bank, it runs underneath all the truck room, all the drains, and then goes into the building. We've had sewer issues in this building for a long time. Now, to replace the sewer line, we have to dig up almost every floor in the building. That's just the way it is. There's no triple basin, there's no storm sewer separation, so that's issue 1. Issue 2 was the electrical service. It's got a 1959 electrical service in it. You know yourself at home how many things have changed electrically since 1959. We've got wires, communication wires, extension cords running all over this building, so we're trying to clean that up and bring it up to speed. Replacing the HVAC system, we have to try to address the boiler. We have a big boiler in the back room that heats the apparatus floor. The furnaces that are in the living quarters side, so we're talking about where the guys live, those were updated in the 90s, but the boiler in the back, it was not the original one from 59, but it was brought up to newer in the mid-80s. But the heat exchanger, so it heats hot water and it blows, the blowers in the apparatus room are still from 1959. Address the flooding from the rear. I should have brought pictures tonight, but during heavy rainstorms, the water runs straight in the back door. Later on, I can show you a picture, and you guys know that if you've been by there, that whole back end, it's all paved, and it's all sloping right toward the building. So heavy rain, it comes right in the building. Install male and female facilities. When the building was built in 59, it did not have a female bathroom. Currently, we have 4 female firefighters. We had 5, one just retired, so we have to, that's something that we have to address. The apparatus room, the ceiling in that room is a low ceiling. Here again, going back, and that's why I was showing you the pictures of the old vehicles. The vehicles got bigger. We have to raise the ceiling. That's concrete T slabs. So to do that is a major construction job as far as ripping it down and trying to raise it up. So we need at least 14 foot, but the new building is going to have 16-foot doors. The concrete drive in front needs to be replaced. We have to put a sprinkler system in, which requires a new water system. We've got asbestos in there that we need to take out, and it's not ADA compatible. So there's a whole list of things that we had to address internally, and our board has finally decided that, you know what, we have to address them. And this picture here shows an overhead. This is a Google shot. It's not the best. But you can see along the back there, that's all asphalt. It's all slopes right to the building. If you look in the front, you can see that one real white spot. We've been patching the concrete to try to make it last, but the whole front end needs to be rebuilt. This is the floor plan of the current building. Right in the center there, you'll see locker room. That's the area that we had to dig up the floor, and we tried making a female bathroom out of it. So we put a shower and a toilet and a sink in there, and we're doing the best with the building that's there. This is what the new proposed building is. So the old building, I'm gonna go back, 6 doors across the front. New style is 3 doors across the front, but they're double stacked, they're double deep. If you look in the back right-hand corner, that shows you what the bunkhouse space will look like, so it's separate bunk spaces for everybody. It separates everybody. 3 separate bathrooms, ADA compliant, shower, toilet, sink, 3 separate ones, and then the living quarters and the rest of the building. You'll notice the floor plan of this, it's the exact same building that's on Bruce Road. It's the exact same building that's on O'Hara Drive. So to try to be cost conscious, we're building the same thing. The only difference is we're adding 1 more bay. So instead of 2 garages, it'll have 3 garages. One thing I just want to note too is if you ever go in our buildings, I hope they look nice from the front, but if you go inside, it's just block walls. It's painted block walls. This is what the building's proposed to look like from the outside. If you have any questions about the actual architecture, I'm going to refer to Jason, but we're trying to make something that fits in with the theme of Lockport. When you talk about Lockport, you're talking about history. So if you look across the front there, you'll see 7 arches, trying to bring in that memory of the 7-arch bridge on 9th Street. The cupola on top, typical of the old downtown building. We think it dresses up from what we have right now. Site plan of what it's going to look like on the property. It does have a smaller footprint than the current building, so that's going to be a little bit more green space. And that's what the proposed building would look like when it's on the property. I can, if you want, I can go into, we looked at moving, we looked at selling. A good example of selling is if you go to downtown Plainfield right now, Plainfield moved to another location, there's an empty firehouse sitting downtown Plainfield. If you go downtown Shorewood, they moved to another location, there's an empty firehouse sitting downtown Shorewood. There's not really a market for old fire stations. When you add in this property, being the triangular piece of property and a 4-foot elevation change from front to rear, very difficult property to try to market and get rid of. So all those decisions were part of our process. So sorry if I was long, but I wanted to paint the picture.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Christiana?
Okay. Chief Scory did a very good overview of the project, so I'm just going to hit on some of the planning and zoning items for you this evening. There are 5 approvals before the Plan Commission tonight for consideration. The first is the site plan, the second are building elevations, third is the landscape plan, fourth is engineering, and then the final one is the special use permit for a planned commercial development. The site plan is in front of you. The general layout is the same as the previous or the current location. Access is still going to be off 9th Street and 7th Street. The access points will change slightly. The 9th Street driveway apron is going to be reduced. This is in IDOT right-of-way, so the plans are currently under review by IDOT, and those will need to be approved by them. The 7th Street access point is going to be widened. As you can see, there's 6 parking stalls that are directly loaded off 7th Street now, so that accounts for the wider driveway apron. There's multiple variances that are being requested as part of this project, and I'll go through each of them. The reason they are required is because this project is essentially grandfathered in its current state, but when you start over and redevelop, all current zoning rules apply. So setbacks, parking setbacks, things like that. This project, obviously with the parcel shape, wouldn't be able to be developed with those types of regulations in place. So variance is requested. The first is for the parking setback. Parking setback required along 9th Street is 30 feet and 20 feet along 7th Street. Their current parking setback is 0. The proposed parking setback is also 0. The current requirement for building setback is 50 feet along 9th Street and 20 feet along 7th Street. The proposed plan shows a front setback from about 18 to 48 feet, and then the rear setback is proposed from about 4 feet to 47 feet. This, again, is very similar to the current siting of the building. The next variance is for the parking stall access. I already mentioned that there's 6 parking stalls located along 7th Street that are directly accessed off of the right-of-way. The code requirement is that parking should be accessed off a private driveway. The reason this is going to be reviewed as a planned commercial development is the fact for all of these variances, any project with 2 or more variances requires a special use permit as a planned unit development. The next image before you is their monument sign. There's also a variance requested for this. Our code requires a maximum message center size of 16 square feet. They're requesting a 32 square foot message center. The reason for this is that they are going to be displaying public service information such as Amber Alerts and weather conditions, so they would like to have the larger display area. The building elevations, I just wanted to point out that they do comply with all of the city's exterior material requirements. And then the landscape plan, they have greened up the site more than it currently is. They're currently at about 28% landscape ratio. 30% is required in the zoning district, and they've increased it now under this proposed plan up to 33%. So they are now exceeding the code requirement. They've also tried to add screening as much as they could along parking areas to screen those from the right-of-way. Where there's no screening. In your packets, there is a review letter from James J. Bennis, which is the city's engineering consultant. They have approved these plans. For staff recommendation, we are recommending approval of the following: the special use permit for the planned development incorporating all the deviations that were mentioned previously, recommending approval of the monument sign with the 32 square foot message center, approval of the site plan with the condition that IDOT needs to approve the right-of-way changes, and we're recommending approval of the building elevations, landscape plan, and site improvement plans as presented.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak on this particular proposal? Yes, sir, if you'd step up to the microphone and state your name.
Hi, my name's Tim O'Reilly. I'm a resident of Lockport and also in the Lockport Fire Protection District. After looking at this, I'm also a retired fireman. After looking at this, I think it's great. Whoever did it did a really good job, guys. So I'm all for it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else care to speak on this matter? Step up to the microphone, sir.
My name's Robert Fiscovi. I live at 602 East 7th Street, right behind the fire station. I grew up, seeing those old trucks, I can remember them. The old ambulance, and then I think my Uncle Peter was on the fire department, served proudly for many years. I can think Lockport does deserve the best fire protection they can get, and it's about time. My mom's house was built in 1960, after Lockport Station was built, so we did a lot of remodeling, so I know what the cost can be, like you said, when you guys start to remodel and rip out the old and put in new. It can get to be quite expensive, so I'm all for this new fire station. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, if there's no one else, Mr. Likens?
That's a tough site. I understand the issues, and I understand the issues of an old, aging building, so I understand the solution that you've come up with here. And I don't have any issues with it. Christiana, there's no sign that's currently at the station, is there? There is a sign?
There's a sign. It's in the kind of triangular corner piece where
Okay.
the two streets intersect.
Okay.
So where the existing sign is, the proposed sign is going to be in generally the same location.
Same location, just twice as big.
22 square feet.
I don't
16
know
or
if the
almost
sign
twice.
itself is twice as big as the current one. I don't know what those standards are. It's just that the message center portion of it is larger than we require. So the height of the sign, the total display area of signage on the sign, that all complies with our requirements. We just have a code requirement. The message center has to be a smaller portion of it, and they're asking for a larger portion integrated into it.
And there's been no objection from residents, the folks that live across the street or anything? I haven't heard any. Obviously, I've heard support, so.
Well, the sign kind of faces towards the intersection. So the only difference is that this sign will be an electronic changeable copy, whereas the current one is manual.
The current one is manual, it's not illuminated. That's my
There
only
may be some
question.
illumination, but
Yeah, the sign that's there now sits on the triangle. Our property is some trees and stuff. It's probably 5 foot tall by 9 or 10 foot wide. Top half's got our name on it, and the bottom half is the old sign where you slide the letters in. It is illuminated. There's fluorescent lights in there at night. So
But
it's backlit.
the new sign will be like a digital LED type sign? Or-
Correct.
Okay. That's my only question, if there are any objections from local residents, the folks that live across the street. I haven't heard any, so I'm fine with the recommendations. Nice job.
Thank you. Mr. Porfilio?
From a taxpayer point of view, is it funded, or are we going to have a tax increase?
Well, that's really not relevant to us. That's a question for their board, not for us.
Mr. Likens was talking about the difficulties of the layout of the site. Last night, I cut out the fire station size and the apparatus bays. I placed them at a 45-foot offset paralleling Route 7, and I was able to clear the 20-foot setback on 7th Street. I was able to clear the existing brick building by 7 feet and the vinyl fence around the tower by 6 feet. And what that does also is it moves the parking from 7th Street up to the front where you can access it with an aisle, and also relocates the garbage to the front if you need to, and the generator can be moved to the back. That way the facade looks a little bit cleaner because you have more frontage on Route 7, and it's, parallel to the street instead of skewed. So the only thing that I didn't accommodate was the 20-foot concrete corridor that's west of the apparatus bays, and I don't know if that has a specific function. I mean, if you put the generator behind the building with access off 7th Street, is there a difference in that? I'm not an architect, so I don't know. I guess that's my first question.
My name's Jason Estes. I'm the architect working for the district. What you're probably unaware of, and that I don't think it's been discussed today, is the elevation change between 7th and 9th is considerable, to the point of about 9 feet if I were to draw a line straight through the bays. That distance has caused a lot of the problems and concerns dealing with the apron access as we come onto IDOT. The other thing is obviously dealing with access on the front apron. You have emergency vehicles, and keeping parking vehicles out of that way for safety concerns is a major design element when we're designing fire stations. The back parcels that you're talking about or the back parking spaces that we're talking about are more for the firefighters as far as shift change. Those are things that basically vehicles would be going in at 7 o'clock in the morning and then leaving at 7 o'clock the next morning when they're off shift. It's not something that would be accessed all the time. The front spaces are for duty vehicles, chiefs, as they come through the facility. So I understand as far as the idea of rearranging it, but there is a lot of other elements dealing with sewers, sanitary, and elevation as we go through this facility.
Well, the parking in the rear would stay. It's just slid over about 7 feet. And the parking in the front on the west, that's in the way of the apparatus bays, is relocated in front of the fire station building. There's tons of room now in the front. So the biggest challenge I see is the elevation change. And you said 7th Street is how much higher than 9th Street? Or is it the other way around?
Are you talking about trying to shift it to the west?
I'm just rotating it counterclockwise and sliding it over.
Sliding it which direction?
Counterclockwise, sliding it west. I'm sliding it west.
The west is the problem that we're encountering. The one thing that is probably not as prominent looking at that is the cell tower and the antenna that is actually fixed on the site.
Yeah, well, it clears the vinyl fence around the tower. I'm not touching that. I said there's a 6-foot clearance from the vinyl fence. It stays intact. And I'm 7 feet from the brick building. I think that's staying intact as well. I'm just looking at ways to open up the front of it. And I'm still maintaining all of the parking and still maintaining the generator is going to be in the back now. You could maybe put more landscaping up in front it just opens it up more. And it maintains, you don't have to ask for all the variances on setbacks either. You're able to accommodate those. Maybe you can come up and I can show you what I got. That might help. I can't put it on the overhead.
We're not here to redesign the building.
Yeah, I mean,
We
I'm not.
designed it, they're the architects.
They're asking for a variance on the setback,
They've
okay?
spent 5 years trying to work up this design.
I understand, okay? You asked for my opinion, I'm giving my opinion, okay? There's a way to make the setbacks work. I proved it to myself, and I wanted to know if this was looked at.
We have looked at the site in
I'm not
many
against the
different
improvement at all, I
locations.
think it's wonderful, it's just,
Let the man respond, please.
We have looked at this site in many different locations. There are elements at the front that we wanted to actually maintain visibility on emergency access. Actually, one of the elements was that you would typically require trees in the right-of-way there off of 7th, but because of the access for the vehicles coming out and the potential for visual impact, that tree was reduced out of that area. That was something that, in a safety element, that we were trying to keep out of there because of the angle of this at the corner of 7th and 9th. So the corner is very tricky, and as you said, rearranging it, I think, I can tell you personally, I've probably moved this thing probably about a couple dozen times as we were looking at it, and each time there were pros and cons to each solution.
okay, and the sign is twice as big as the regulations. Are there any other business owners that are gonna have a problem with that along Route 7?
In essence, would this set a
Would they
precedent?
would they complain about it or say, I think it should be bigger because of what has to be displayed, but there wouldn't be any that would say, well, why can't I make mine bigger than if it's,
I'm sure
32
that is
inches.
something that would come up. The next person that wants one is going to want a larger one, a commercial business. The argument here was that this is a public service sign, and that's the reason for the larger area. They're not displaying commercial information. This is to get public service information across, weather alerts, amber alerts, et cetera. So it's more emergency as opposed to commercial advertising.
okay, that's all I had.
Thank you. Mrs. Wald?
How long will your project take?
We have a construction manager. We went through the process of hiring and interviewing. The estimate is 12 months, but he's shooting for 10.
Sounds good. I hope you get great weather for
Me too.
construction.
Thank you. Mr. Oxley?
I like the design. I do have some concerns over the sign, but hearing what Christiana said there about the public service, I'm fine with it. You're to be commended for the design with the arches of the bridge and the stonework, and I have no issues.
Okay, I agree also with staff's recommendations. Question, this message center, is this going to be one-sided or back-to-back, two-sided? I couldn't quite determine that from what was submitted here.
Its design is to be two-sided. So the sign that we have sitting on the property now is kind of angulated and faces the intersection. This, and you can see from the drawing, this would be more or less
Facing both directions of
Parallel
the 9th Street
to 9th.
traffic. Okay,
Correct.
so it's double-sided.
correct.
Okay, and just a minor thing, some of these illustrations seem to show a cupola on the top of the building, some didn't. Is that going to be there?
It's going to be there.
Will you guys be able to slide down a pole then, or?
No poles. No poles. Well, it's going to be a single story.
Okay, so the cupola is just ornamental?
Ornamental, it's to try to bring in that same historic value of the building downtown.
Okay, but, okay, that's the only questions I had. At this time, we'll have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Oxley, second by Portfolio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. You've heard staff's recommendations. Do we just need one motion for the entire recommendation?
I would make a motion to concur with staff's recommendation, six items.
Second,
A motion by Mr. Oxley, second by Mr. Portfolio to concur with staff's recommendations. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Likens?
Yes.
Mr. Portillo?
Yes?
Mr. Maloney?
Yes?
Mrs. Wold?
Yes.
And Mr. Oxley?
Yes.
Motion carries. This will go to the committee of the whole meeting on the
March
16th. On March 16th, that'll be a week from tomorrow, right here.
Mr. Chairman, on the Lockport Township thing, it shows that they will be before the committee of the whole on April 6th. Is there a reason for that? Is it a typo, Christiana?
No, our typical schedule would be that the cases go to the April 6th meeting. The fire district, we're trying to accommodate them in their rush schedule, so we're pushing it forward.
That's fine. I want to make sure it wasn't a typo and get things mixed up there.
Yeah, I understand. They want to get this building down and the walls up and the new one and have it pretty much buttoned up by the end of October at least, so they can work through the winter on the inside. So they're on a, understandably, to get this done in one season. Any citizens to be heard in any matters at all? Seeing and hearing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Oxley, second by Mr. Portillo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Turn the heat down anytime. You can turn the heat down anytime.